Could the United States and China, two of the world's superpowers, ever find themselves on the brink of war? It's a question that might seem unthinkable, yet the undercurrents of international relations suggest a possibility we cannot ignore. As we delve into this, it's vital to understand the position of these two nations. The United States and China are not merely countries, they are global powerhouses, both economically and militarily. They are the titans of modern civilization, their influence reaching every corner of the globe. In 2022, the United States allocated a staggering $877 billion to its military, accounting for nearly 40% of global military expenditure. This astronomical figure is more than 10 times what was set aside for federal education, highlighting the country's emphasis on maintaining its military prowess. On the other side of the Pacific, China's military budget is shrouded in uncertainty. Yet, it is widely believed to hold the second largest military budget globally. The rising economic power of China, coupled with its increasing military spending, paints a picture of a nation preparing for any eventuality. But why this surge in military spending? The answer lies in the global security environment. The world is becoming increasingly insecure, with nations feeling the need to bolster their military capabilities in response to escalating tensions and conflicts. The war drums are not yet beating, but the musicians are certainly warming up. In this context, the thought of a conflict between the United States and China is no longer an absurd premise. It's a potential reality that, while still far-fetched, is becoming slightly more plausible with each passing day. Now imagine a hypothetical timeline where tensions escalate to the unthinkable, a war between the US and China. Picture this. The year is 2024 and the global economic landscape is unsteady. The world is in the grip of economic instability. The Federal Reserve in the United States has been systematically raising interest rates, a move not seen since the late 2020s. This has created an uncertain environment, with economies around the globe feeling the pinch. Inflation is stubbornly remaining above the targeted 2%, and the monetary tightening is beginning to affect the living standards of American families. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the ripple effects of Russia's invasion of Ukraine are being felt. European countries have significantly increased their military spending in response to the deteriorating security environment. This has led to a record-breaking global military spending, amounting to approximately $2.24 trillion. The United States, already leading in military spending, has allocated a staggering $877 billion, accounting for nearly 40% of the global total. On the other side of the Pacific, China's military spending is also on the rise, though the exact numbers remain shrouded in uncertainty. The increase in military expenditure worldwide reflects an increasingly insecure world, with states bolstering their military capabilities in response to perceived threats. In this volatile international scenario, the United States and China, two of the world's superpowers, find themselves on opposite ends of the spectrum. The United States, with its focus on military spending, and China, with its rapid economic growth and expanding military capabilities, are becoming increasingly wary of each other. This mutual suspicion, coupled with the ongoing economic instability and geopolitical tensions, could potentially be the spark that ignites a conflict. In this tinderbox situation, one misstep could lead to catastrophic consequences. As tensions rise, incidents occur that push the two nations further towards conflict. The year is 2024, and the world watches with bated breath as the United States and China lock horns on the global stage. A series of unfortunate miscommunications begin to erode trust between the two superpowers. A diplomatic cable is misinterpreted, a message is lost in translation, and soon, both nations find themselves on edge. Each perceived slight or misunderstanding fuels the growing fire of distrust, causing both sides to view each other with increasing suspicion. Meanwhile, political disagreements become more frequent and more heated. Trade disputes escalate, with both nations levying hefty tariffs and sanctions on each other. Diplomatic talks falter, and international conferences end in deadlock. The ideological differences between the American democratic system and the Chinese communist regime become starkly apparent, further fracturing the fragile relationship. But it's the military posturing that truly heightens the tension. The United States, with its massive military spending, flexes its muscles in a show of force. In response, China ramps up its own military capabilities, unwilling to be outdone. Naval exercises in the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean become increasingly aggressive. Cyber espionage activities reach an all-time high, with both nations accusing each other of cyber warfare. As the world watches, a new Cold War begins to take shape. But unlike the standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union in the latter half of the 20th century, this conflict feels far more volatile, far more unpredictable. The stakes are high, and the potential for devastation is enormous. Both nations possess nuclear capabilities, and the prospect of a full-scale war is a chilling thought. Yet, with each passing day, the possibility of a peaceful resolution seems to slip further away. With neither side willing to back down, the stage is set for a showdown. There comes a tipping point where war no longer seems like a distant possibility, but a frightening reality. And so, we find ourselves at the precipice of such a moment, a tipping point, a point of no return. Imagine, if you will, a world where tensions between the United States and China have reached a fever pitch. The two superpowers, armed to the teeth, are locked in a high-stakes game of geopolitics. The spark that ignites the conflict could take any form. Perhaps it is a military incident, an unintended skirmish in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. A US naval vessel conducting routine operations finds itself in an unexpected face-off with a Chinese warship. An accidental collision, a miscommunication, and suddenly the world is thrown into the throes of war. Or maybe it is a diplomatic fallout, a breakdown in communication and mutual trust. An incident of espionage, a violation of international law, or a controversial political decision could all serve as the trigger that sends the two nations hurtling towards the battlefield. But in this age of interconnectedness, it could very well be a cyber attack that pushes us past the point of no return. Imagine a scenario where critical infrastructure is targeted, causing widespread chaos and panic. Power grids are down, communication systems are disrupted, and the economy is on the brink of collapse. Such an attack would leave no choice but retaliation, and a full-scale war would be inevitable. It is crucial to remember that these are all hypothetical situations, but as the tension continues to rise, they become increasingly plausible. And as we teeter on the edge of this precipice, we must ask ourselves, is this a future we are prepared to face? As this incident unfolds, war between the US and China is no longer a question of if, but when. In the aftermath of such a war, the world as we know it would be forever changed. Picture this, a global landscape scarred by conflict, economies in shambles, and nations grappling with the humanitarian fallout. The financial impact alone would be staggering. The United States, as the largest spender on military worldwide, shelled out an astounding $877 billion in just 1 year before the war. Now, imagine the cost of a full-scale war with China. Coupled with this, the Federal Reserve's decision to raise interest rates, a move made in a pre-war economy, would now be playing out in a world reeling from the devastating effects of a global conflict. The economic aftershocks would ripple out, affecting not just these two superpowers, but economies worldwide. And let's not forget the human cost. The toll of such a war would be unimaginably high, with countless lives lost and even more displaced. The world would face a humanitarian crisis on a scale not seen since the Second World War. But the impact wouldn't just be economic or humanitarian. The global power dynamics would shift dramatically as well. In the wake of such a conflict, the balance of power could tilt, with new alliances formed and old ones fractured. The world map could be redrawn, and the geopolitical landscape reshaped. The aftermath of a US-China war would be a world marked by uncertainty and volatility. It would be a time of rebuilding, of nations grappling with the new reality and trying to navigate a path forward in a dramatically altered global landscape. The prospect of a war between the US and China is a sobering reminder of the importance of diplomacy, mutual respect, and understanding in our increasingly interconnected world. It underscores the need for dialogue over discord, for bridges instead of walls. It reminds us that in an era of global interdependence, the fallout of such a conflict would be felt by all, and the ramifications would echo through generations to come.